Okay, for people who are joining this live stream, we haven't been having so many of these live streams of late for two reasons. One, because version 12.1 is getting wrapped up and there's lots of bug fixing going on. And two, because I've been off, not fishing, but fizzing, doing physics, working very intensely on that. Actually recording a lot of screen captures, which we'll release when we're ready to launch the whole project. So this is a rare language development meeting that we're having right now, and let's get started. I'm being reminded we are almost at the 500-hour mark for live streams that we've done as part of this program. All right, let's start off with Spliced.
So this is something we have discussed, and we have already an implementation in C.
In the external.
Unfortunately, we don't have an external for some time, so it is in the external, but I don't think you can use it.
Is there any way we can slide it into 12.1?
I think we can. If we find a good name, if we agree on the name, we can. The code is already there.
Great. That would be great. Mm-hmm. Partly because, and this is a very outrageous thing, but the that would help to make the potential universe tweetable.
Interesting.
I think it fits. I think it's currently well, I don't know, we don't have real candidates, but 141 characters is one pretty good one.
Okay, so we need a short name.
No, I don't think so. We're not going to worry about that. That's a piece of connectivity of the world of having the universe be tweetable. I don't think we're going to worry about. Okay. Represents an element of a list that will automatically be. Why don't we say something like be spliced into the list as a sequence of elements?
Yep.
Because you don't have the list to refer to, really.
Of a list that will automatically be spliced
into an outer list, into a surrounding list.
Represents. What do we say for nothing? Will automatically be removed. Well, that's what we should say. Why did we not? Why did we say? Oh, represents an element of a list. I see. Represents an element of a list. I really would like to get the word spliced in there. Yeah, we should make this bigger. Sorry, guys. So the only other candidate name for this is peeled.
I like unpeeled, honestly. But getting back to spliced, how about that will automatically be spliced into any surrounding list?
Well, represents an expression that will automatically be spliced into any surrounding list as the sequence of elements.
Sure.
Any list in which it appears.
Okay, also fine. Actually better in a sense, because it doesn't imply you could nest with some head other than list.
Yes. We need to say something about is removed as part of the standard evaluation process, right?
Yes, indeed, because this is implemented via a value.
Resolved as part of. Okay, let's take a look at some examples here. I wish I could run it. So the example that I found most useful is subset replace. Right, if I do a subset replace into some list, you know, well, we could just do a subset replace into the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we say, in the subset replace, we say X blank, Y blank, arrow, spliced of ABC. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Do we like the way that looks? I mean, do we think that's you know, we've messed around with this name many times, but to me, okay, let's read what that would say. So we're doing subset replace XY. Oh, gosh. Does that read correctly?
A clearer case in which I had problems was the second example. I was trying to say spliced expressions do not splice. But then I thought, well, it says spliced, as if it is already spliced. And that's why I changed to auto-flatten.
I think we should say automatically flatten.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the C alsos? Oh, if I might say so, the very most obvious C also here
is flatten.
Flatten and flatten at.
Indeed.
I think we should also mention catenate.
Okay.
Since that's my favorite bug, is using flatten instead of catenate. In other words, where you crush a sublists where you don't mean to. All right, let's take a look at this. Flatten a list of elements inside another. Well, splice a list of elements into another list.
Mm-hmm.
No. Insert a list of put a list of elements. Put a list of elements. Include a list of elements that are to. Include a list of elements to be spliced.
That's awkward. Also, you're doing contortions to avoid using the term sequence instead of list, the first list.
I see. I'm not really.
Okay.
We have a list inside the spliced. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're treating it as a sequence.
No, I know that, but you're including a list of elements to be spliced into a surrounding list.
Well, but then include, etc., to be sliced. I don't know. This just strikes me as awkward, grammatically awkward.
Well, that's the question. Is it grammatically awkward because they have the wrong name? That's what we're not so worried about the actual text here.
Oh.
I think it's the verb include. What I don't like there is the verb include.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. Give a list of elements to be spliced into a surrounding list.
That I'm okay with.
Yeah, okay, but so does that read correctly? To be spliced into a surrounding list. I mean, the problem is a different form than, for example, nothing, which just, see, nothing we say automatically removed.
What was wrong with splice elements list or sequence into a surrounding list?
Sorry, I'm sorry. What are you saying? The
Instead of give.
Or specify a list of elements.
It doesn't matter. I don't care about that text. What we care about is whether the name of this function is right,
Yeah.
and we're trying to determine that by figuring out whether we can write sentences that involve it that make any sense.
Well, I think we can in this case. It's just not this
Just
particular
I didn't do
set.
it. Okay.
Me, the thing is that it looks as if it is in past tense, while it's the thing to be done later.
Yeah, there is that. Well, I think I believe it was the original splice whatever into a surrounding list.
Yeah, I understand that, but the whole point is we're trying to explain the past tense use here.
Oh,
this is
okay,
by using the term to be spliced. Right? That's my point. And the question is, does that work, or is it that the spliced name for the function is wrong? Okay, the question is, if you see this as a piece of code, do you understand what it does?
Well, yeah, but I'm conditioned to.
No, I understand that, but I'm asking
other
people perhaps in this meeting. I don't think it's terrible. I think if you see this and it's, I mean, I find this a little bit less obvious. Spliced ABC. I mean, it's better than peeled. Peeled is just utterly obscure. Peeled is something where you'd have to know the kind of analogy, I think.
We have also, I was looking for other functions. We have spliced distribution. I don't know whether that's precedent in any sense.
Spliced distribution?
Yes.
The heck is it?
It's a distribution that is specified by chunks.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. I don't think anybody other than auto-completion will be bothered.
Define with a normal body and a Pareto tail. Okay, so that is a distribution that has been spliced together. Well, that's not bad.
Mm-hmm. It's a similar sense, yes.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's call it spliced and let's put it in. I guess we should tag it as experimental, but I hope it isn't.
So it accepts inside like sparse arrays and things like that. So the outer list needs to be a list, but internally it can be any type of array. Is that okay?
Does it make any sense in a sparse array to insert it into a sparse array? I don't think that makes a lot of sense.
It'll be normalified.
No, I understand, but into a sparse array.
I thought
notion of splicing.
Yeah, no, there is not. That would be bad.
Yeah, and actually nothing breaks any possible outer sparse array.
Okay, there is the question of spliced and nothing in associations, but perhaps that's not an issue for today. I mean, the question is, we could imagine splicing essentially a packet. I think it's obscure. No, that's not going to work because an association requires a particular structure.
Yeah, this is not the tool for structured arrays of any type.
Right. We have a comment on live stream which I don't fully understand about compatible with polymorphic operations for this, but this is something. Nothing sees this. This is just a thing for taking. This is a symbolic innermost way to insert things in lists. There are plenty of ways to insert things in lists if you're doing it from the outside, but the whole point of this is to have a payload that explodes on contact and inserts itself into a list.
I have a question more for Jose at the moment because I don't remember the code. Does this work with set part? I'm guessing it does not.
Oh, that's an interesting question. In other words, if you say something like this, A, B, C, D, and then you say this of 3 equals spliced of whatever, what the heck does it do?
No, I don't expect that to work.
Okay. I think it would just show up as an explicit spliced and tough luck.
Exactly. I can imagine that evaluating TT then would splice.
Right, but
Yeah, but it won't feed it into the down value. The own value of TT will contain a naked spliced,
which I think is better than the situation we have now with sequence.
What does sequence do?
You don't see it. I mean, yes, if you look at the own value, but you will think from the output that you have,
right. So in other words, if you reset the third element of the list, after you do TT of 3 as spliced, you reset TT of 3, it will reset the whole spliced.
Right.
It will not reset the first element.
Right. And if you were to just say, enter TT and shift enter, you would see the explicit spliced, I think.
No, you wouldn't, because by the time you get it out,
it will have evaluated. Yes, you're right.
And it will have spliced itself.
Yeah. Okay. So it's going to be as mysterious as sequence in that respect. But yeah. Okay.
How would you see it? You would see it if you did $TT, you would see it.
Right. But isn't that the same with sequence?
I think so.
I think so too.
But sequence has the insanity that it is auto-splicing inside other expressions than lists. So that when you say TT of 3 equals a sequence, it's going to,
right.
Well,
it's cause of confusion, including some recently here in-house.
Well, set is hold sequence, but for example, if is not. So people write very frequently, if condition, comma, sequence at list, empty list, which is so ugly.
Yeah.
We don't document hold sequence. No, we don't. That's just an internal thing, right?
No, we do. I think it's an attribute, or is it sequence?
Sequence hold.
Sequence hold. Sorry, sequence hold. So set is sequence hold, but if is not. So if you want to do condition to insert a sequence, people have to do these very strange things. So that's another advantage of it.
By the way, don't forget to, let's put that in before we forget it. Let's reference sequence hold. Let's reference this to spliced.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we also want to do that with sorry, let me put another thing in here. In addition to this, we probably want to put insert in here.
Yes.
Is list really relevant?
Because it's the only thing into.
Yeah, it sort of is.
Okay. Because insert will auto splice, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to, since we're, well, okay, we can put it into insert. Okay, so we really want to put that, it's probably before flatten at. Or is it before? Probably before sequence here.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
This is going to be a nice piece of functionality. Oh, another thing is replace part. Is that relevant to this? No, it's not, because replace part won't do this. Only insert does this.
Right.
And we want to insert that before. I'm sorry, it's so small here, guys. I'll make it bigger. That's okay, and we'll insert and flatten at. Okay, do you want to figure out what page this goes on to? Let's what guide page it goes into. And don't forget to commit to Raj for the new features list.
Yep.
It's coming in late.
We have a list operations page, don't we?
I thought so.
Structural operations on lists, something like that.
Yeah, but where do we have nothing? Where is my friendly elephant thing?
Properly speaking, can one have nothing?
Oh, we've made these jokes too many times. Okay, so here, yeah, there it is. So I think we want to put it into here. We got a bunch of background noise here. Automatically removed from lists. Give sequences of elements. Splice. Sequence of elements automatically spliced into a list. Okay.
You have to be spliced. I think it should be removed, the B.
Okay. Okay, now we also have structural rearranging and restructuring lists. I would prefer to put spliced instead of sequence in here.
Could have both.
Yeah, we could have both.
Put spliced first.
I think we should put spliced in here and not sequence. I think sequence is just a hack that is just going to confuse everybody.
As far as I can tell, though, its behavior is very similar to spliced, except spliced only applies to an outer ambient list.
That is correct. Maybe we should say that here.
Yeah.
The second node is trying to compare spliced and sequence.
Oh, you already have it. You're ahead of me. Good. Okay. All right. I think that's that. Let's go on to the next item.
Okay.
Fold while. Futurized web page of fold while. Are we serious about getting in? I've already forgotten. So let's see. Fold while.
Well, this still needs some work, and the design is not so trivial. So our problem here was that by default, this function returns the first case that fails and not the last that succeeds.
Let's remind ourselves from the examples what it actually does.
Yeah.
Okay, fold while, divide 5 factorial, range of 10, integer q. So keep folding in division from 5. I mean, it would be, is there a fold while list as well? Yes, there is.
Yes.
That will be less obscure than this one.
Also featurized.
Okay, so fold while list is dividing, starting with 5 factorial. Notice that the fold, I see that this always has to have a starting condition, true? Is there a 3-argument form that omits the starting condition? There probably should be.
Yeah, there is, yes.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
It's just the first element of list if not otherwise specified.
Okay, so fine. So then so fold while list until integer q fails. Fold while list. Why does it return the 1/6 there?
Yes. So
failure.
Right. So that's the thing we have discussed a number of times. And we have the precedent of nest while and nest while list, which does that too. And so the way to avoid this is by an additional argument that allows you to give more or less argument. So we can say, give me 1 less.
By the way, I'm sorry, just commenting on comments on the live stream. The reason we're introducing spliced is because it is similar to sequence, which we've had forever and ever. I have never been happy with sequence because it is very undefined, because it's very dangerous. Sequence will explode on contact with any function, and that's very awkward. Spliced is built to be only deal with lists, which makes it completely safe. And that's why we have it. And that's why, we've had this problem for like 30 years of having, hacky code written with sequence. This avoids that hacky code. And should sequence exist? Yes, it's necessary for it to exist for low-level operations, but this is the user-level thing that we want people to use. You can consider it semantic sugar, not syntactic sugar.
Yeah. The hacky so-called reason that we still absolutely want sequence for top-level use is for var-args, things like find minimum, etc.
Well, no. What sequence is what X double blank matches to. What X double blank, when you say f of X double blank equals, whatever it equals, the actual value bound to X is a sequence, which is then spliced, right?
Yep.
But that's an operation that happens outside of evaluation. That's an operation that happens in pattern matching resolution, which is a different thing than evaluation.
Sure.
The place where we get into trouble is the interaction between sequence and evaluation.
I'm only claiming we still need it.
Oh yeah, we do.
I mean, even ordinary external users.
No, I agree, but we need it. Also it's the binding of hash.
Right.
I mean, it's the binding of things that automatically splice themselves in to things in general. But the thing that I think is probably wrong is that sequence auto splices on evaluation. Arguably, it should only auto splice on bound variable resolution and things like that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree though.
Doesn't matter. We're 30 years too late anyway.
Okay.
I mean, and you win pragmatically, so to speak. Okay. Let's look at fold while list. Okay, so you're claiming that nest while. You say that nest while returns the first failure case?
Yes, it does.
Ugh.
So this design follows very closely that of nest while.
But what does while do? While doesn't return the first failure case, does it?
No, we have no. And for example, take while does not do that either. But this is a lot closer to nest while.
Right.
Why did we make nest while return the failure case?
It's the simplest thing, because imagine that you have a seed that fails already. You need to return something.
Okay, but what about nest while list? Does it also return the failure case?
Yeah.
Yes. Because we have this alignment.
It has to return the last thing that nest while would return.
Right.
Plus whatever before.
Right. I mean, the basic problem is that nest while, I mean, in the most extreme and ridiculous case, nest while could return nothing, could have returned nothing in the case where it failed the first case.
Mm-hmm.
Could have.
Could have, but didn't.
Correct.
Something we should remember as a paradigm for things like that, because we agonized about what could it return. I mean, it is a consistent thing for it to return because it means that it's a list. If it was in a list, drat, I wish we'd done that.
It could have returned sequence.
that's a grenade with a pin pulled out when it's inserted and then it explodes in whatever function it's inserted in.
But some functions, for example, pick does that. Pick can return a sequence if it has nothing to return.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, pick is a bit of a disaster, I have to say.
I've been using pick recently. My use case for pick is the following. I'm doing a big parallel computation. I've got a big list of elements, big list of things. I can't do parallel select because that's not an embarrassingly parallel operation, so to speak, right? Select would require, so what I do is I do a parallel map across all the elements, and then I get back a true-false list, and then I say pick the elements with the true-false list. That works nicely.
No
But what do you-
argument. I believe it was not thought out fully for case of nested lists, matrices, etc. That's my
Does
vague
it even work
recollection.
for those?
Not very well. There's bug reports somewhere in there.
I thought it was only one level thing.
Well, that was news to me.
No, it's supposed to work on deeper cases, but
Oh
it doesn't
gosh,
go.
the selector can be deeper. That's crazy.
Yeah, and it doesn't do it very well. I don't remember what the problem is right now, but I think in the possible issues there is an example with sequence.
Well,
You just passed at the top there. Middle, right by your arrow.
what? What is that? What is that doing? I thought pick only worked on lists. I don't understand. Why isn't this just returning a null list? I don't understand this at all. Pick returns those elements of the first thing. Oh, I see. This is a false. That's a top level false. That's crazy. That's completely crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
so
nobody's ever going to use this case, which is good, because this case is crazy.
Yes, but if you have something like a matrix in the first argument and a list in the second, you have similar situations. So it's less crazy, but the depths here are not very well treated.
Yeah. You all have to pardon me while I pop open this can of worms in the middle of a meeting.
Yeah, let's not do this. This is an LCC discussion for the future sometime. I mean, this should have been defined only for one level. I don't know why it was generalized like that. How old is this? 2004. Okay. All right, fold while list.
Yeah, so the way this is solved in nest list is by adding the final 3 arguments. But actually the last one is the important one.
Right.
That describes what it's going to do in certain cases, what the default cases and things.
So it tells you to go farther or additional results or fewer results. So in our case, if you just want the previous one, you just say -1 at the end.
So what happens if you get fewer, if there are fewer that come out than exist, so to speak?
Right now, it's implemented as an up to sort of thing. So in other words, return the last one possible.
But what if there are none to return?
Good question.
I think it should be an error.
I think it returns the default initial element. I think, but
no, but you could tell it. I see, for an extra n times. I see. So that's parameterizing this behavior. So the question is the default value of n.
Default value of n is 0.
Yeah.
What if the default value? What if n was -1?
We could make that the default. That's the other, really the only other competing possibility.
Right, but in that case, we could have a different default between nest. Oh, no, that's completely crazy. Sorry, between nest while and nest while list. That's completely crazy. But the case where if that was -1, we still have the case where you have to return nothing.
Right.
But the good news is we do actually have something to return now.
You did just say nothing is something, didn't you?
Something like that.
Okay, just to confirm.
Something like that.
I'll have it. Yeah, I'll have it return nothing. I mean, if that's what we're agreed on.
Which return nothing?
Fold while, not nest while. I'm not touching that.
No, but then it's inconsistent with nest while.
Well, then I got to go trampling on someone else's garden.
I don't think we can change nest while. Not a chance.
I would prefer to keep the consistency.
Okay.
We'll provide these arguments to do whatever the user wants.
Starts with X, but then repeatedly applies F until applying test to the result no longer yields true. You see, if this had been nest until...
Yeah, I was just thinking that. But then it's sort of a nest until not, or nest something like that.
Well, this nest while is a nest until not.
Yeah.
But then, no, it isn't even that. It's not.
It's
even
a nest until not true.
Yeah. Keep dividing by 2 until the result is no longer an even number. It says there as the example. I mean, by the way, that's not a useless case where it keeps going. Right. I mean, the argument for what it's doing here, if correctly documented, is you've already done the look ahead. You see what I'm saying? You've already tried it. Why not return it? Right? It's not like you don't try it, that it says, oh, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to just return this. It already tried it. The trouble is that while, oh boy, let's think about this. So while condition, I mean, while is operating as a side effect.
Mm-hmm. A better example could be take while.
Okay. Well, take while has the advantage that it has an outer wrapper which could have nothing in it.
Right.
Yeah, well, take while will be completely crazy to give an element where it isn't true.
Yeah. Yeah, you can run off the end of the list there.
Right, but also nobody would expect take while. Well, okay. All right, so if we have to keep the stopping condition of fold while list consistent with nest while, then what are the questions that remain here?
Well, this is in comparison to nest while list that takes 3 additional arguments. So we are taking 2 of them. The other one is a maximum condition, but here, because we have the length of the list in the third argument, we don't
have a max, right?
And then the other additional argument, the M, the next to last, that's useful to perform comparisons with the previous result.
Yes, how many previous ones to compare with?
Exactly, because for example, you may want to compare whether they are equal. Stop when 2 of them are different or equal or something like that.
Yes.
So these are things that have been added in nest while list, not in take while or while itself, but they seem useful.
I agree. I mean, it's a possibility that some of those would be worth adding in take while.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, actually, take while, one thing that I've wanted many times is find me the, let's see, no, that's a different operation. Find me the running maximum. Get me a sequence of running maxima, so to speak, in a list.
Yeah. I mean, maybe fold while is a way to go about that, but
no, it isn't. I don't think it is. I think
okay.
I think the running maxima, one way to do it is just to do a fold. How does that work? Would that work? Actually, that's a cute way to do it. If I have something like this, and I say fold of max over that list. No, fold list. Sorry, fold list of max over that list. and then I simply say split that or delete duplicates. That's clever. I never thought of that before. I've needed this operation so many times, and I think we put that in a. Oh, that's cool. That's nice. That's a piece of like poetic code. And
with differences, probably we can find their positions as
well. With differences in this.
No.
Instead of delete duplicates.
How?
Because the ones that are not differences.
The zeros are the non-positions.
Right. The things that are not at zeros mark the positions.
Except 0 here, and you got the positions.
Well, you're saying that the things that accept 0, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's very nice. It's good examples. That's actually a nice example of I don't know what, functional programming or something. I don't know what kind of programming. Might be a fun thing to put on the both the fold list. Can we put that on the fold list page?
Yeah.
Seems like a nice application thing. What's that?
I'll do that.
Okay.
All
right. There's a question on the live stream about whether take while can be compiled. I do not know the answer to that. If it can't now, it must be very close to being able to be. Okay, so fold while list. What happens to the version of this where there isn't an X? Oh, I see. We can do that in this case here. Is that right? That's not ambiguous? Yeah, that's not ambiguous. The 3-argument case is not ambiguous. But by the time you're going to add the M and the N,
I think they actually all end up being unambiguous. You can always sort out which you're dealing with by whether you have or don't have a.
Right. Okay. Are there any other questions about fold while and fold while list?
One more, which is about operator forms. So I think I have in the page of fold while. So 2 cases, yeah, the cases at the end can be done. I don't think we can do more than that. So
we have an operator form of fold?
We do, but for example, we don't have operator forms for next while because it's another complicated function with many arguments.
I mean, that's cute that we can do this. By the way, I just want to bring up something in terms of operator forms. The form triple at, which I use a lot. Right? Doesn't have an operator form because it isn't an operator, so to speak.
What do you mean?
I mean that there is no word for this, right? That would be, I can't say apply F. It's apply F at level 1, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But there isn't an operator form, apply top or something of F. That is the pure operator form. That is, I mean, what I have to write is F triple at. I mean, I write this endlessly. I've got tons of code that looks like that.
I mean, roughly, you have an infix or 2-arg infix for something that doesn't have a pure prefix.
That's right.
Well, we can do this with operator applied with a permutation.
You're saying you'd say operator applied.
Yeah.
Of apply.
Yes, and then apply. And then we would have a permutation which is 1, 3.
This is not simpler.
No.
What is this doing now? And then we have a curried form like this?
No. We would have F and 1. Yes.
F1 like that.
Yes.
You're serious here. Okay. And then I put this in.
But
So
you
it's-
could, I
So
mean,
it's
you know,
132. Permutation is 132.
Oh, no. That's horrifying. Okay. Great. Well, I mean, I would prefer to use F ### but it's just, that's. I think we should put it on the agenda to consider the possibility of having an actual name for this @ sign thing.
Okay.
Okay.
we should just allow adding more ats to change the level. We do something like that with percents. I'm joking.
I don't understand this comment on our live stream about nest while and nest while list. They do different things. There's no polymorphism problem. They take all kinds of different stuff. They just don't. They handle absolutely generic data structures. They do different things. Someone's pointing out that I can just say moving map of max onto this. Oops, I need more arguments. What does moving map? Why does moving map needed to size W? Why does moving map not assume that it is everything? Well, that's interesting.
Maybe it wants a 2 there. I'm just guessing.
Why would it want a 2?
How many things to compare?
But that's not going to give the right answer, is it?
I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
No,
that will just.
Oh, because you lose the first one.
No, all it's doing is it's doing in buckets of 2. I mean, it's like
Oh.
moving map is like a map over a partition.
Oh, so you want something that's more like the max equivalent to analog to accumulate.
That's correct.
All
Which
right.
is exactly what we're doing with fold.
Yeah.
Which is correct there. Okay, let's go on. I think we seem to be in. I personally think we shouldn't bother with the operative forms right now. Let's just leave them out for right now.
Okay. So something small in a live stream, it was suggested that we add granularities of 2 months and 6 months, and Nick and I cannot come up with a good name.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 6 month set is probably obviously semi-annual granularity, but for either 2 month sets or 3 month sets, I don't
What
know
about bi-monthly? Does bi-monthly mean twice a month?
Bi-monthly technically means twice a month.
Okay.
I mean, it's where we run into the biannual versus biennial problem of the two terms are so often confused that.
Okay, so what does this go into? This is going into date object, right?
Yep, it's a granularity specification like quarter or.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why we want this, and it's obviously worthwhile. So let's just come up with a name.
We use nouns, not adverbs.
Okay, so we've got. Well, why don't we call that half year? Half year and. Is there anything wrong with calling it half year?
There's no problem with half year. And then would we say like 3rd year and 6th year for the 4 and 2 month bins? I mean, they're not as popularly used.
Well, but what is correct with respect to leap years? What does half year mean anyway?
I mean,
yeah. Right.
So there's the notion of, so we have a split as always with calendar units versus our more pedantic definition of units, where the length of a month in the unit framework is fixed, but the length of a month is different when you're using calendars because it varies depending on how long the month is.
Right.
And so for the calendar units, we tend to use we use the definitions that are basically based on the iterators used in the calendar. So semi-annually or half-yearly would be 6-month bins. If it's, the bins
So
would be of
6 month
different
bin. So it
lengths.
doesn't miss a line. If you say this happens semi-annually, it'll happen on June 1st or whatever it is, and it won't sort of wrap around as the leap years move.
Yeah, if it happens before July 1st, then it's in the first half of the half year, and if it happens after that, it's in the second half, regardless of whether there's a leap year. The tricky case is for Islamic and Jewish calendars, which have leap months and leap years. But I tried looking and I didn't find anything super definitive on how they handle half year cases there. It may just be something where we say we have some default system or don't use this granularity for these two calendars.
I'm sure we can reach out and find out the answer to that if there is an answer. I mean, it may be that, the real question will be, I would suspect, things like financial institutions and so on that would have defined this.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes they may not exist in these cases for whatever reason. Okay, so let's understand what this is. So what is the request for? The request is for, we've got quarters which are 3 months.
Mm-hmm. And the request was for 6-month chunks, and I believe the original request was for 2-month chunks, but we may also want to have 4-month chunks. So
I wonder whether we shouldn't just make it less obscure and just have a thing that says 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Because I worry about, if we say half year, we're not saying quarter year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You could certainly
Because
allow
nobody
quarter
does.
year as an alternate name, but
Well, we should do that. But
Yeah, I like that.
mm-hmm.
that way,
Yeah, it's pretty unambiguous. At least for Gregorian and Julian calendars.
all right. So, yeah, in a particular 6-month bin, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right. Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay. Oh boy, through thread.
Yes. This was a suggestion, and it's very similar to head map, which we were planning to change to through applied to align it with our recent applied functions.
The fact that I can't remember, I do remember what head map does, but the fact that I can't remember what through thread does is a bad sign, and the name is not helping me very much.
Well, I think, I'm not sure there was an actual suggestion of what the implementation was. Arnaud suggested it was something like this. So I've simplified it, but the suggestion was just through thread.
Honestly, that's short enough that if one ever knew to do it, it's not clear that this helps one very much. If you see that in through thread in code, and versus you see an inner construct, I'm not sure that it's really helpful.
What about calling this like zip?
Zip is too similar to thread. Unfortunately, zip.
Is that the standard meaning in other languages?
There's a very complicated thing, because I had a bunch of naming that then got used in other languages, and it was slightly different, and it's gotten very confused over the years.
Also, there's the notion of zip for compression, so that's going to be confusing.
I can't imagine that zip is a good idea for this. It's a short name. It's the same mistake we made with names like through, because we thought that head operations would be more common, so to speak. I thought that 30-something years ago, and they may yet be back. The problem is the concept of a symbolic, I don't even remember how it works anymore, through of that, right? Or is it that of X? Yes, that's what it is. Right, that operation, I mean, it may yet, you know, by the time we're doing currying all over the place and so on, we may yet end up, you know, being happy about this. But for 30 years, this thing has sort of languished as being a pretty obscure thing. I think also that the concept of using that, which here, right, the through of this. Wait a minute, why didn't that work? Am I completely confused? Oh, no, I see. This is what I want. That's what I want. There. Okay, so I don't understand this. This is the through thread of this, which instead of doing this, where it throughs everything.
Yes, that's the other one, the through applied.
Which does what?
Effectively what you just did, just taking a list of functions and apply them all. So you see head map,
Yeah.
the list of functions.
Yeah, but so what does head map do that's different from through? Head map, a list of functions, FGH. Oh, I see. So this is the analog. So that will be through applied.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, it's obscure. I mean,
mm-hmm. So head map was also very difficult to name. And when we introduced the applied functions, operator applied, etc., we thought that perhaps this was the way to go for through applied.
Yeah, pointing back to through.
Yep, exactly.
But perhaps compounding the error of through.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
Is head applied an obviously bad name? What are the other applied functions now? There's reverse applied.
Operator applied, carry applied. And I think we haven't introduced yet budget applied.
Okay, so reverse applied of f of xy
mm-hmm.
does that. So head applied, would that mean the right thing?
I think it gives the impression that there is just a single head, while the main point here is that we have many.
Yeah. Well, it is the right name, probably. Through applied, given what through does, through applied is the right name. Question on our live stream, is through thread apply a map thread of construct? I do not know. Of what? Map thread construct.
I think it would be a pair of lists and the variables. So matrix. So now another list of ABC and then 1, 2, 3.
But doesn't that need the map thread? Doesn't it need that in a list? I'm not able to read this. Help. Apply. This thing is going to be a map thread of construct applied to this.
Well, actually, we don't need the apply. I would remove the apply. I think the map thread should be enough.
That's magnificent. Be a good example for construct, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I admit that this isn't, look, through thread is such an obscure name that it's not clear it's any advantage over map thread of construct.
Yep, I agree.
If we could get a better name that would actually explain what it's doing, Well, I think through thread is a hopelessly obscure name.
Yeah, and there are multiple ways of achieving this. Now, looking at this, we can also transpose and then triple add construct.
Yes. Okay, through applied.
So this is a function that has appeared a number of times.
Oh, I know. This is a function that, again, has had naming problems.
Yep.
Well, the question is really, is this form, is it primarily an operator form, or is it, I mean, the problem is in this form, it is more like a backwards map, so to speak. But in this form, it's more like a star applied type function. Oh boy, for some reason, I have this vision of this must be like 4 or 5 years ago now, being at some airport, being in one of these design meetings, discussing this exact same function. We've discussed this many times. I wish we had just had a good, yeah. I'm not seeing it again. I mean, I think through applied is a bit obscure. Can we just talk for a minute about, by the way, Jose on our live stream is pointing out that the running max is one of the neat examples in the documentation for moving map. So we should check that. Another question about any calendar input browser UI. I think there is something coming there for forms on the web, at least. Not sure about that. In terms of a user interface element in the front end, that's an interesting request and a reasonable one. I mean, we were more concerned about web forms immediately. By the way, Mohammed on the live stream is asking about dataset and talking about having a button to make it into a blob that can be copied. I think that is coming in 12.1, a mechanism for doing that.
Yes.
And I think also, I mean, by the way, one thing, this is kind of not the right meeting, but I might mention it anyway. A thing that I've noticed that really would be useful is if I do a big, let's say I do a range of, I don't know, 10 to the 5 or something, and we get a too big, right? I would like to turn this thing into an iconized expression, into a fully downloaded iconized expression, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I think it had been suggested to add a button there together with the show more, show all, one which is just iconized.
Yeah, I think that's the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can we make it happen?
I think it was suggested already. I will check with Itai.
Okay. Is that an Itai problem, or is that, where would that happen? Is it with
I think
Itai
so.
or with, okay, fine.
I would ask Itai. He has been handling
All right.
iconized.
I want to talk about string settings for number form, because this is driving me crazy, right? So we have, you want to, I mean, I want to make numbers that are, for example, let's do some examples here. Let's say I go 1.5 point, numerical value of pi or something. Well, numerical value of pi, whatever. Okay, now, okay, so there I get them done like that. But let's say I want to get that pi formatted to 2-digit precision, and this thing also to 2 digits. Okay. So I say number form of that, comma 2. Oh, it did the right thing. Well, let's see what happens if I do number form of that, comma 3. You see, that's not doing the right thing, because I want that to be able to give me a 5, 0 there. If I'm trying to line numbers up, is there a way to do that?
I think this was infinity, comma 3.
That's obscure.
Comma 2.
Well, that means no, but that's not necessarily what I want, because maybe one of these numbers. Okay, so look, a typical. Okay, there's another case that's very ugly. Okay, so let's say I say n of 7 times 10 to the times 10 to the 12 or something. Okay. Okay, I get 7 point. That's really ugly. How do I get rid of that point? What version of number form gets rid of that point?
I think we had discussed the possibility of having number point goes to automatic, or going to none, going to.
Well, I mean, you can do this. Look, one way to do it, which is just completely obscure, is to say number point arrow nothing. Okay, that will do it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really obscure.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is, like, for tables of numbers and things. Yeah, I mean, I want some way of doing that. I mean, again, I think we need to inventory, like you did very beautifully for the plus minus stuff for the round. I think we need to inventory these different cases of displaying numbers where, you know, something like this, arguably, well, I don't know what's correct here. I mean, I think 7 point times 10 to the 12, it's nice. It gives you that precision indication, but why isn't it 7.000 times 10 to the 12?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, there is in old Fortran and C, there was this printf specifications with G7.9, things like that, and those were very specific.
Well, right, but they had, I mean, that was a mantissa exponent deal, but that doesn't really help you here, because it doesn't really help. I see, you're saying where it's, but you see, I want to have, if I have in my table, if I have this, if I have two numbers in my table, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I have this and I have 7.4 times 10 to the 12, okay? Now, for many purposes, you know, if I'm putting these in a nice, elegant table, I want that to say 7 times 10 to the 12 and 7.4 times 10 to the 12. I don't want 7 point times 10 to the 12. I don't want the second one to be elided to 7 times 10 to the 12. See what I'm saying?
So the first one should be 7.0?
No, well, okay, that's a good question. It should either be 7.0 or it should be 7. And I don't think one can decide immediately between those two. I can imagine different cases.
Mm-hmm.
But it sure shouldn't be 7 point. That's useless. That's neither elegant nor informative.
Well, it's a way of indicating that it's not exact. Just
how could it be exact? You can't get 7 times 10 to the 12 as an exact number. See, 7 times 10 to the 12 in our system wouldn't be an exact number. It would resolve.
Right.
I don't even know whether you can print 7. Can you do that? Can you write a number? If I type 7 times 10 to the 12, I'll get this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, with decimal form, am I able to get, I don't remember.
No, it would be the other way around, with scientific.
Okay, let's see. If I say scientific form of %37,
yeah, because it only
that
works
seems
on
wrong.
reals. It only works on reals, like number form itself.
See, that seems wrong again.
Mhm.
Right. So I mean, what we've got is a screwy situation where if I end this, I'll get the 7 point, unless I do the number form, number point hack. Look, I think what we should do is to inventory the different cases of numbers, of which the ones that I'm aware of are whether there's a point at all. Okay, so the issues that I know of, whether the decimal point is displayed at all, whether whether to display the trailing decimal point,
Mhm.
whether to put a 0.0 or point more than 10, in a number. What other cases? I think those are the main ones that I've run into. Is that right? See, I think the real thing that one has to think about are these sequences of numbers where one needs consistency in the sequence somehow. So I'm saying I think number form was designed with respect to individual numbers, but I think what we need to think about is you've got a sequence of numbers. How do you get consistency between them?
Right.
So, for example, let's say we say table of 3 over n goes up to 12 or something. Okay, great. Now we say n of that. See, why do you, 3 point is what we get to represent the fact that it's a decimal number. Fine. Gosh, it's very unclear what we want to get in all these cases.
Well, there is not necessarily a single answer here.
I know, but like, for example, if I want 5, I think I can get, if I say number form %40, let's say I want 5, does that do that? Yes, that does that. I think the case that I'm most concerned about is that point case. How do we get rid of the point? And one way to do that would be to have a number form here that says it isn't just one of these, maybe becomes automatic or something.
Mm-hmm. We could certainly have number point goes to automatic.
No, but I meant that one of these numbers becomes automatic to indicate, well, it isn't quite right that's one of those numbers, but to indicate if it is consistent with an integer, don't show the point. But I agree, number point goes to automatic seems like a very obvious thing to have. That's a minimal thing to have. And I think number point goes to automatic should be the default for access labels.
Mm-hmm.
Because having a 3 point on an access label is just silly. Okay, maybe it's a topic for a different time, but can we get with Brett maybe and ask him to join one of these? And let's talk about that case. But I think number point goes to automatic, and having that be default for access labels, or possibly even also in traditional form, would be a good idea.
Okay.
I'll look at it.
Okay. But I think also we need to, again, inventory the different cases here, particularly ask Brett with respect to tick labeling. All right. Oh, we have a long comment here. I need to get my lunch. This is, I am failing through lack of food. Just to be clear, I mean a summary blob where the data set stops displaying its content, but turns into blob-like sparse array. Oh, I see. I see. So basically what you're asking for is an iconize of a data set, if I'm understanding correctly. So in other words, if I say data set of this, and it has a big display on the screen, the idea would be to have something. Now, what happens if I just select that and say, oh, wow, what is that doing? Why doesn't that have the standard right-click menu? Oh, it does have a standard right-click now. Okay, and I say iconize that data set. So why would that not, I mean, being able to have a little bit more detail in the icon, in the iconized form, that would be nice. But why doesn't that serve what you need? Well, anyway, but that's another suggestion, is for a structure like data set. I mean, don't we for a list? What did I just do here? What was this? I must have done something different there. But don't we for a list, if I iconize a list? Yeah, we do give the head and the length and so on. Whereas for data set, we're just giving the byte count. So that's probably a mistake. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we can add more information there on dimensions or depths.
I think that would be useful, how many elements there are and so on, rather than just the byte count.
Right.
So I think that at least does part of what we need. Good. Okay, talk to you all soon. Thanks guys on the live stream too. We'll be back in due course. See ya.
Wow.
Bye.